Okay. And I want to do this a few times because I find even when I've said it 2 or 3 times, people still don't quite always remember something. Online via Learning Suite. It's going to open at 5 after midnight, which is the earliest I can do it on the 25th, and will close at 11:59. So you have a little less than 24 hours to take it. Open book, open note, open device, do your own work. No group test, no asking others for help. Questions, and we'll go into questions in a second. So the call for citations from readings and lectures. I usually have 1 or 2 questions that don't necessarily call for citations. Usually my standard so far has been 5 questions worth 25 points each. Which means the whole thing's worth 125 points, which is 25% of your class grade. So this is worth 1/4 of your class grade. Any questions on any of this? Yes?
What would you say an average time that someone takes on the test is?
2 to 2.5 hours is what it's been taking in recent semesters. Occasionally people will go to 3 hours. I find that probably at least 90% of the class is done after 2.5 hours, based on the times I look at. So be sure you plan out, because once you start, you've got 3 hours. So make sure you have an uninterrupted situation. Make sure you have power. Make sure you have Wi-Fi access. Class sources: 3 books you read, 5 Orders of Ignorance, all the Webster readings, any of the in-class lectures. Remember, all my slides are online on the website, assuming the website comes back up. I still haven't heard back from tech support on that as to why it's down. And podcasts. So if you have notes from podcasts, oh yeah, this podcast thus and thus, they said this. A little harder with podcasts because you have to figure out how to cite it. Great midterm cheat sheets. Chapter 18 of Mythical Man Month. He basically recaptures the entire book up to that date in an outline form. So it's better than the actual table of contents in front because he's talking about the concepts. So, you should have this bookmarked. Chapter 18, Mythical Man Month. You can scan through that in a matter of a couple seconds and see, oh, there's that idea. There's where he mentioned it. Peopleware, all you've got is a table of contents. And Accelerate, Appendix A is capabilities to drive improvement, which is a nice summary of all the best practices that they talk about. And most best practices can be turned into failures by saying they didn't do this. Webster 7, which we'll cover next week, is about, what, about 25, 30, maybe more pitfalls. And these are all very, for those, how many of you have read Webster 7 already? These are fairly quick reads. And if you go to the page where the pitfalls are, you can look down real quick and say, aha, that sounds like a likely one for this particular problem. And click on it and say, yes, it applies. So Webster, lying to yourself and others. That's one of my favorite pitfalls. Happens all the time. You've got the online readings list, so you can go and quickly look through and say, because I link to what is in each of Webster 1, 2, 3, 4, and you look there and say, oh, this is probably what I'm talking about. Lecture slides are there. And of course your own notes. So any questions on any of this? This is what you want to, what I'm trying to do here. This is not a memorization test. This is a test to say, here's a problem. I know I've read about this problem. Who talks about it? Aha! Brooks talks about it here. DeMarco and Lister talk about it there. Webster talked about it over here. And these are the consequences of that problem. That's what I'm trying to train you up to understand. So this stuff is familiar so that you're not blindsided, because I was a great optimist, really up until Pages. I had great success with most of my products. Not all of them, but most of what I did, I had great success. And Pages was my painful time, and made me really dig in and say, okay, why does this work sometimes and why doesn't it? Yeah.
So the answer is Or like?
I'll give you questions and answers, yeah. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I'm going through this both today and next week. Okay, I'm giving answers. You must cite from at least one of the class sources when a citation is asked for. Feel free to cite to my lecture slides. You know, there are things that I say, case in point. What's the only way of dealing with schedule slip? Dump features, okay? None of your readings talk about that. At least I don't think they talk about it directly. But you can say, you know, Webster said in class all the time, dump features. That's a perfectly good citation. But if the point is simply restating a class source, you need to go to the class source. You didn't read all the chapters in Mythical Man Month. Actually, I'm not sure you read all the chapters in any of them. But you can feel free to use them. And I've had questions where people have cited things from chapters that weren't assigned and said, oh yeah, that's actually a very good point. So you may find very good answers there. Form of citation, we'll talk about that in a second. Should be identified specifically what you're relying on. And basically, the more specific and detailed you are, the higher the score you get. My grading approach is that your basic score for a brief answer and appropriate citation is 80%. If you want 100%, you're going to have to talk about why that is that. What the citation talks about and why it's relevant here. And I'll show you. So you don't have to. Okay, so here's a sample question. This is actually a question one of my first semesters. I've strongly tempted at times to put this back on the test because you have all the answers in the next slide. So here's what you typically have. You have a setup. You know, here's what you are. Part of an IT team, developing custom accounting software. Here's your first mistake right there.
Can we quote that?
Yes, well, that's a citation. You know, all important mistakes are made the first day. But it must be in place on time. And what is the staff doing? Well, we're going to double the staff. Everyone's going to have to put in 20 hours overtime. Everyone needs to be at the office at 8 a.m. each morning for a mandatory 1-hour meeting. Scheduled time allocated to testing will be cut in half, and all year-end bonuses. This is like a nightmare, isn't it? All of you are going, this is so bad. This stuff really happens. This stuff really happens. In fact, like a week or two after the first test I had that had this question on it, my daughter Crystal called me up just to complain and said, yeah, I said, we got some new guy up in upper management. He wants everyone here in the office at 8 a.m. each morning. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just listed that as a horrible thing on the test. For up to 5 points each, explaining why each of the 5 proposals will not help, giving at least 1 citation each. This is the standard thing. Now, it's not always risk. Sometimes I'll say, okay, identify, 3 risks that you see and then 2 possible solutions. Again, with the citation for each. Now, here's an actual answer I got. You don't have to be this verbose to get 100%. But this gives you a sense of what 100% answers are like. So you've got, here's why it's a problem, here's why it's not going to work, here's the citation from Chapter 2, Mythical Man Month. Here's why, overtime doesn't work, citation. They actually quote it there. You don't have to go so far as to quote the book, except briefly. As long as you correctly identify what the issue is and why it's bad, and paraphrase what the book says, and then have the appropriate citation, you're fine. Any questions on this? I don't want to scare you with these long answers, but this is what I look for if you really want an A. I'm looking for some thought, not just a quick Brooks Law, Chapter 2, Mythical Man. That'll get you a B. Assuming it's actually, the answer is Brooks Law. If the answer isn't Brooks Law, that'll actually get you 1 or 2 points. So, for a given answer, missing 0 points. Don't leave anything blank. Put something there. Something, yeah. Put something for each answer. Inappropriate answer or irrelevant citation, 1 to 2 points, depending on how I'm feeling. Unspecific citation or correct explanation with no or wrong citation will get you 3 points. You can get a C just by saying, well, you know, you're not supposed to add people to a lake project to Marco and Lister. Okay, that'll get you 3 points. Yeah?
So the specificity or citation could be like a chapter or a specific reading.
If it's a chapter, you pretty much need to let me know that you either have to quote something that makes it clear that you're quoting, what you're quoting from the chapter, or be more specific for a subtopic within a chapter, a subsection, whatever. Here's a 4-point, adding people to a lake project makes it later. Just Brooks chapter 2 would be 3 points. Saying this specifically, so you're telling me you know what Brooks law is, Mythical Mammoth chapter 2. I'll give this 4 points. That's a little sparse for me, but you know, if you know that much, it's like, yeah, you know what the issue is. You know what it is, and you know where it is. 5 points. Got to work to get that A, and almost everyone does. I'll say that. It doesn't necessarily have to be this verbose. I'll say that again. But if you write 1 to 2 full sentences explaining it, then have a citation, you're going to get 5 points, as long as it's correct. The idea here is I want to make sure that you can turn around, if you find this at work, not that you'll necessarily feel safe doing it, but if you find this at work, you could turn to your buddy or your manager and say, well, you know, really, adding people to a lake project makes it later. That's in Brooks chapter 2. They look at you and think, whoa, you know that? I said, yeah, I got my copy right here on the shelf. Yes?
And a lot of this could kind of be an opinion too, right? As long as like our understanding of why it's a bad idea is reasonable, then you'll...
If it's reasonable and defensible, if it's, like I said, I've had people drag in stuff that I would not have thought of, and I've looked and said, yeah, that works. I consider that a reasonable opinion on it. Now, if you try to use Brooks chapter 2 to say, yes, you should add people to a project, it's like, no. I really don't care about your opinion. And if this weren't easy enough, occasionally I'll see answers and say, oh, that's a thing of beauty, and you get 6 points on it. It's like, that's so good. I'm just proud of that. And that'll help make up if you're weaker on other things. Now, standard test taking stuff. Don't bog down on any given question. In other words, go through, answer, because this is Learning Suite. You can go back and forth all you want. Go through, answer the ones that are easiest and most obvious to you, get them out of the way, and then if you're short, if you've only gotten 3 citations for one of the questions, go back and say, okay, now I got to do some digging. I'm going to bring up Brooks chapter 18. I'm going to look at all the pitfalls. Oh, hey, this pitfall seems to apply. Bring it up. Oh, yeah, it does. Okay, so there's number 4. Okay, I'm looking in Accelerate, Appendix A. Oh, wait, they talked about this. Yes, we got a citation there. So I've seen students who I thought should have done better who got bogged down on tests and bogged down on questions. And so I get like, the first 3 questions have these lengthy answers, and then they get progressively shorter towards the end of the test. So I would say go through, literally as a technique, go through, and by the way, I try to remember I had a problem one semester because I didn't realize it, but the default on Learning Suite for the short answer test was 1 line of text that you could see. Trust me, I had a lot of complaints on that. So I try to make them big. Oh, another standard technique that I will strongly, strongly advise, write all your answers on your device and then copy and paste. I have had students who have had catastrophic internet disruptions, other crashes, who've answered stuff, and then you had a hiccup at Learning Suite, and poof, the answers went away. So my strong recommendation is you type everything locally, and then when you're happy with it, copy it and paste it in, or copy and paste repeatedly as you go along. Any questions on this? Yeah.
What if we give you some really impressive ASCII art?
Might get a point for the first one. After that, it's like, why are you wasting your time? Anyway. And that's it. We'll go over the same list again next week, just to remind you. But again, if you've been reading the assignments, you'll do great.